so excited to introduce the world to Evelyn. Evelyn, help me say your surname right so I don't butcher it.
So it's Kaingu.
Kaingu. See, I want to say Kaingu, like kangaroo, but we're going to say it properly. Kaingu. There we go. Evelyn Kaingu. World. This is Evelyn Kaingu, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lupiya. I'm going to let her tell us all about Lupiya and the mission that she's on and some of the crazy experiences she's had recently, which are really exciting, which we'll get into in a moment. But Evelyn and I were just speaking before I pressed the record button, and I was just reminding myself really the reason for this series, the Venture Forward series. The whole idea behind it is how do we continue conversations that hopefully inspire female entrepreneurs, encourage female entrepreneurs, and help entrepreneurs move the world forward, because that's what we're trying to do with Enigma Ventures, is invest capital in ways in which create impact and drive change.
Yeah.
So that being said, Evelyn, tell us, maybe start with Lupiya. Tell us a little bit about the business that you're building now, and then we'll maybe go backwards with how we got there.
Right. So just like Sarah introduced, my name is Evelyn Kaingu, and I am the co-founder and CEO at Lupiya. And Lupiya is a fintech startup that provides online loans, investments, and now payments. And so we've now embarked on this journey of building a neobank, and we are basically looking to provide financial solutions to emerging African countries. And that's basically what we are doing now. And that's the journey we've embarked on as Lupiya. And so very excited. And typically in our journey, as we've been building it, we've had a really special focus on women entrepreneurs, as well as agri-SMEs. And so it's just very exciting times to be in this space now. And yeah, and I just can't wait to share all the nuggets that I have and just see how much benefit it can have for so many other women.
And you're based in Zambia, and you are Zambian,
Yes.
but you're thinking bigger than just
Yep.
Zambia. You're operating in Zambia right now, but you're thinking about global markets, and you're thinking about creating products and services to reach across Africa.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit how you transitioned yourself, or maybe we'll go back to a little bit of your origin story, but tell us how you started and what has helped you start to think big, because it's not every day that someone wakes up and says, I'm going to build a neobank for Africans across the continent.
Yeah.
So how do you get there? How do you get from where you started to how you're thinking about building your business now?
Great. So basically, Lupiya is born out of a personal story of mine and my co-founder, Muchu. And this is as a result of a business that collapsed due to lack of capital. And Muchu and I had to really, and Muchu being my co-founder, had to really think around what can we actually do to ensure that businesses like ourselves do have access to capital. And so in starting to build what was going to be a platform that would create that opportunity for other SMEs, we realized this was a very huge challenge for other SMEs on the continent. And every other SME was faced with this similar challenge. And so we sort of then took it upon ourselves and held on to this crazy vision of trying to make sure we can create this platform for African SMEs. And so Muchu and I set out and with just $500, went to a community group of women agri-traders, and we gave them our first, what we call our first loan book, which we gave very small loans to these women. And it's from then onwards that we came to give so many other similar groups. And so part of the goal that we were trying to do at that time was just basically very simple milestones of just generating as much revenue as we could and getting some traction with the customer base that we would leverage at the time. And so the ultimate goal was to just really validate the model, and if really there was a market for us to get SMEs that had the appetite for what we were doing. And so having tested with over 500 women in the space of 3 months, this just validated what we were trying to do. And we now then sat back and said we were on track to just really building a platform that was going to leverage and help SMEs. And as we went on to really just trying to put out this financing for women and other entrepreneurs in the Zambian market, we also realized there was still an even bigger space for personal loans. And as we then set out to build the platform and just generate as much traction as we could, we decided to also just experience the teething issues of building a business, right? Capital, looking to leverage more partnerships and grow the business itself. And so we then raised about $50,000 from family and friends, which was able to help us grow the business up until a particular time. And it's at this point in time that we then realized that we were then looking to get more capital that we needed for the business to be able to grow it. And so we started on the journey of fundraising, which was going to be our first, which was going to be our seed round, and just very excited about that, and just going on the market and looking to get an investment. So this is 100 applications put out, pitching to investors who told us we're too small, and just investors looking at microfinance in such a way that they thought was very high risk. And so finally, with all the application processes that we went through, we then heard of a platform called Enigma Ventures, which is basically the platform that you run, Sarah. And just having realized that you were pro-women, having been a women-led organization and founded, you were pro-women, looking to help women in Southern Africa. Having read your story and going through your background, the one thing that clicked for me before we even looked at the investment was just how I saw myself in you, and just looking at what that journey looked like in terms of you starting very small and really building a big and profitable company. And so instantly it was like an actual, it was basically like a magnet for me. And I knew that this was going to be the channel that we were going to take to be able to. So basically my point is pretty much me seeing myself in you and really trying to ensure that we were going to get the right investor on board to be able to help us with this journey of scaling the business further. And so we applied for the investment through EV. We got shortlisted. And I remember at the time that it was happening, COVID had just broken out. And
oh yeah, it was not a good time, was it? It was a terrible time.
At all. Very terrible time. COVID had broken out. No one knew the direction COVID was taking. And we had just had the preliminary discussions with yourself, and we're making so much traction into having to get into DD, which is basically due diligence. And we had a call with Enigma, and you had then indicated how you were going to put the pause button off of this investment, simply because we just were not sure what direction COVID was taking. And at the time, as a business, we were focused on growing the business, having had a hybrid model of being a fintech and having a physical branch. In that very weekend of having talked to you on a Friday and said, we can't get the investment through the line just because we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. My co-founder and I, we just sat down and I convinced my co-founder to completely build the entire loan management system online in that very weekend. And by Monday, Lupiya was online, and we put out the adverts on social media. And for the first time in Lupiya's history of having operated for 4 years prior to that time, we had over 150 applications in a single day. And so just that excitement and traction that came into that week, into that next 2 weeks, gave us enough validation to then reach out to you again, which we did, and explain to you what the model had now changed to, from a hybrid model to a full online model, is what had us also completely thinking now that we had arrived, and finally we had built a fintech product that was acceptable or accepted by our consumers, which typically we had thought was going to be a microfinance company, and then eventually pivoted into a fintech company. But that validation came there and then with the investment, which we were able to then validate with Enigma Ventures. And after having gone back to CEO and just presented to you what our new findings were and where the direction of the business and what we were looking to take it as, is how pretty much our story came in, and Enigma Ventures invested $1 million, which was basically what we were fundraising at the time. And so perhaps, and the real takeaway for us is just really that validation of having had an idea to really provide access to capital to SMEs and individuals to be able to run through the next 4 years of our journey as entrepreneurs, and finally fundraising $1 million to then be able to deploy it into the market and start to scale the business, is just really like a dream come true, and a lot of validation in terms of having been able to even raise that financing. So that's basically the founding story, and we're here today having raised that those funds and pushing through and building the next phase of our growth, which is basically a neobank.
There are so many fascinating things for me from that story, and obviously I've heard it before, but there were so many things that struck me afresh again, just listening to you sharing. And one of them was just that reminder that so often our greatest successes can be born out of our worst moments. Like,
yes.
Lupiya was born out of another business that you tried to start failing and it not working, and it giving you the idea for the impetus for creating something else that might be more valuable, or that actually is really needed in the marketplace because of your own experiences. And that was true of my own entrepreneurial journey of, discovering what doesn't work helps you figure out, oh, here's an opportunity. You can suddenly see things uniquely because of failure.
Yeah.
So that's really powerful, I think. It's just understanding that sometimes our biggest problems, our greatest failures, that we feel terrible at the time, actually be really creative moments that create opportunities like we'd never have experienced before.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that struck me was just you talked about, well, we started with $500, and then we managed to get $50,000 from our friends and family, and it was like we started here and we started small, and then we worked with what we had, and then we did a bit more, and we were able to grow a bit more, and we did a bit more. And it was like, we don't suddenly overnight think, I'm going to build a neobank.
No.
You start with the idea of, let's see if we can provide a solution to this problem, this specific problem. And can we keep providing solutions and keep enlarging the size of the problem that I'm attempting to solve?
Yeah.
And I think that's often a disconnect for entrepreneurs, is the disconnect from thinking like you've got to solve world peace in one day. Rather than thinking about solve a small problem that potentially could be a big problem, because a lot of people have that problem. That's the key, isn't it? Is, can you solve something that is a problem that affects a lot of people? And that's effectively what you're doing now with Lupiya.
Yes.
Which is extraordinary, and what a crazy and amazing journey you have been on in the last 3 years, because you're right, our journey started together in the middle of COVID. You convinced us to say yes when you pivoted and figured out your new business model, and went online and went digital and went all in on creating a technological product that didn't and doesn't exist in Zambia, which was really, really exciting. And so we looked at you and saw potential. I mean, that's what investors are always looking for, right? Is entrepreneurs who have tenacity, who don't take a no, who hear a no or hear the not yet, and do something about it and demonstrate, okay, well, this is what we're going to do in the meantime. This is how we're going to fix this scenario or fix this problem. And that's ultimately what keeps you ahead of, anyone else, because you're not giving up. Tell us, Evelyn, a little bit behind the genesis behind, you recently met a very famous, extraordinary person. Tell us a little bit about the shift in what happened recently with starting to think about investing in agriculture and creating a product for farmers, and tell us how that led to an unusual meeting.
All right. So like I had indicated, so once the investment came in and the business model had completely changed, and so every journey that we were taking beyond this point was learnings, and how do we acquire customers digitally, and how do we expand what we do as a business, and also just provide impact, which is what we wanted to do. And so as we have continued to grow the business, we've also become very intentional about making sure we can impact the people that we provide financing to. So we've always had a special focus on women, which is through our special purpose vehicle called Lupiya for Women, where we intentionally lend to women entrepreneurs. And so just being very intentional about that. And as we were growing in the space, we realized that SMEs and in particular agri SMEs are very, again, very excluded, a very excluded market, also considered very high risk because of the payment patterns and just basically the lack of undocumentedness that they had. And so what we then decided to look into as well, into market segments, and always being or having first mover advantage, is just making sure that can we look at alternative data that is available to be able to consider these markets. And so in that intention of being very pro impactful, very ESG centric as a company, we then decided to provide financing to agri SMEs, looking at moratorium financing based on it being seasonal, looking at it in terms of inputs that they need, looking at it in terms of climate smart financing. And a lot of what we've done now is a lot of smart irrigation pump financing, which is what they need and typically these farmers are seasonal growers who typically would farm in the rain seasons. And between that time, they can't do it because they don't have access to pumps or irrigation equipment. And so this is what we've heavily done. And having been very intentional about being green, being intentional about monitoring our carbon footprint, we've financed a lot of farmers. And so having been as well alumni of a lot of programs that we are also intentional about participating in, because this is where we leverage our partnerships, this is where we leverage customers. And so we've gone through US Embassy programs, and having also supported a lot of SME agri farmers, an invitation came from the United States Vice President to come and meet with us to just really commend us on the work that we are doing. And so at this point, in a month into us knowing she's coming, right? And so the invitation came through and the VVIP is coming. And we've just really amazed about how many stories you've highlighted and the impact that you're creating with the SMEs. So at the time, we didn't even know exactly who was coming. And so the announcement, we heard from the news.
We didn't even know. So we knew someone was coming from the US government.
VIP
we didn't know.
Person, an advance party came through. And we had to meet the advance party. They did a bit of inspections, had a lot of visits with our customers, and just to really get a feel of what the success stories were on the ground. And finally, we heard, just like everyone else on the news, who the VVI person was. And finally, that email came through and we had to prepare for it. And so finally, Vice President Kamala Harris came and she visited, and part of her agenda for Africa was green economy and climate smart focus. And so just being intentional about the decisions that we made months on end, and being there at the right time, and just being intentional about supporting SMEs, supporting women. And this was just so much validation into the whole story of us beginning with $500, meeting Enigma Ventures, and then getting the $1 million investment, and through to this journey and having this validation of finally the vice president coming in and just really validating the story. And you know, as everything has started to sort of align in its steps, because remember, we were hybrid, we meet Enigma, we become fully fintech, and it's become very important to use digital tools to be able to reach demographics that can be reached in demographics like in areas like Zambia, where people finally have a smartphone, but very little financial institutions can reach them. And so being, again, an institution that's very intentional about that, and just being able to leverage technology to be able to do that. And so everything is just coming full circle in terms of just really validating the model, really having, rather having the vision really being validated, and looking to now explore this into the different markets that we're looking to expand into, which is Tanzania and Malawi. And it's just very exciting. And just 2 days ago, we also got the exciting news, and having the president having come through to us, the ambassador to the United States, Trinidad and Tobago, just gave us the call, and just really looking for us to really go and replicate that model there. So I'm just really starting to rethink how we are going to do that there with the women, with the agri SMEs. Is just very exciting. And so again, just these opportunities opening up, just because of what we intend to do or what we plan on doing while we are on this journey.
What you've done and what you've done, right? And actually sort of the track record of the consistent delivering on your values and being intentional about the purpose and the change that you're trying to drive, and then getting some recognition for it is extraordinary. Did you have a big fangirl moment?
So you know a month before, right? You know a month before, and in that moment you have enough time to prepare your speech, and you know what you're going to say, and you really want to make sure you're so aligned to what she's actually coming to do, right? And yet the excitement of being in the space. But when we saw her actually coming in, that's when the anxiety kicks in and you're sweating. And you know, Secret Service warns you, you are not touching the president. Make sure it's a handshake. This is you do not move within your parameter of where you stand, right? And she was literally coming to us, extending her hands for a hug, right? And we're thinking,
they told me I can't hug her.
Do we hug her back, or what's going to happen here? But you know, so it's like a whole mixed emotions at the same time, and just having.
Did you hug her? Did you hug her?
No, so we didn't. So we did. I think as she extended her hands, I think she noticed that we were not reciprocating, because it was a very hard rule. We couldn't do it back. So.
She didn't get the memo. Her Secret Service didn't tell her. We told them they couldn't hug you.
So you realize how she's just equally human. And I think it also just comes to her as well that, you know, this protocol that needs to be involved here. And and so Sarah, just that validation of her coming and us being on this journey, and Enigma, yourself coming on this journey with us, and all the support that you give us, is just really remarkable. And we really are excited for the future now and where we are headed. And we give our first loan out on the 1st of May in Tanzania. And so we have a whole little celebration party that we are having the background here that we have planned. And so just really running through that sequence of events again, and making sure everything is going to be right when it happens. It's just very exciting for us, and just commending what impact investment can do, especially for women entrepreneurs, starting out as well with $500 and being a very small entity to being called mid-corporate now. And so just that excitement of that evolvement in our journey is just really amazing. And finally, the icing on the cake, having the vice president come and validate what we're doing here, and just being intentional to support women and be there for SMEs, be there for individuals. It's just really something that we're excited about doing, and we're going to continue to do, especially for the African continent. And if we do get to America, we do get to Trinidad and Tobago, and we are just excited that we're going to be replicating that model there. So it's exciting times for us.
What would you say, Evelyn, to the people that would say investing in women is not a thing? Investing in African women is not a thing. What would you say to the naysayers?
I would say that the minute you take a chance on women, you create the opportunity for even more women to really embark on a journey that is unheard of. And to put it in the best way possible is, I have a nickname of the unqualified CEO running $1 million company. And this is what investment or investing in women can do for women in Africa, especially. These are things that we dream of. Having started a fintech company with just $500 is unheard of. And having platforms like EV take that chance on women like ourselves to be able to grow it into $1 million business is a dream. What has happened to me especially is that I've become a role model to my society. I have become a pillar that creates opportunities for SMEs, for agri-entrepreneurs, for individuals, and now having had partnerships with Google and MasterCard. These are platforms that we hear about, we see on TV and we dream about, and finally there's an opportunity for Black women, African women to be able to dream like Google, like MasterCard, to be able to create real impact in the actual communities that they actually serve. We understand the spaces better, we live in these environments, and who better to make that change? And that's what investing in women actually does. And so my take on it is just, let's go for women, let's support women. We have created such big opportunities for so many women, and I'm just grateful that I am even in the forefront and a pillar that people can actually resonate with. So it's very exciting, very exciting.
I love that. What would you say, Evelyn, some of your biggest challenges? You talked about being a role model for others now, having a lot of responsibility now as one who is now an enabler of others. But what have been some of maybe your biggest challenges as you've tried to grow and scale your business, or maybe even doing business in Africa? But what do you think of when you think of your challenges with driving growth?
Yeah, I mean, like every other entrepreneur, I think one of the biggest ones is always going to be access to capital, right? And that being the biggest challenge, how do we access it? How do we scale businesses and grow? And I think that will always be the constant in the challenge of growing a business and being able to navigate that and making sure that we are on track. And so cash being the king for every form of growth will always be the challenge, and just finally learning how to navigate that and being on top of your cash needs as a growing business. Second one would be human capital. It's always, especially being a fintech, being in a space like Zambia, there's always going to be a challenge of finding the right tech deployment that you need in a business, be it different departments that start to grow out of what you're starting to create. And so the human capital and the demand and navigating, managing the human capital is one of these big challenges. And I think as a CEO as well, and having gone through this journey of, we were hybrid, we knew how to get our customers in a physical space, and there's a whole proven model out there. And we found ourselves in a space of really learning how to acquire our customers digitally, and in spaces or in areas where, first of all, they have to have a smartphone, and how can we alternatively look at these individuals to be able to tap into those markets and be able to leverage that customer base. And so again, so it boils down to strategy and how you're going to do it, and make sure you remain relevant, and make sure you remain profitable and continue to generate as much revenue as you can. And so those are some of the challenges that we found ourselves navigating. And one of the key ones as well is fundraising, which basically, as you start to grow, you need capital again to grow. And so while the business has cash needs of its own, the business now needs to grow. We are looking to expand to Tanzania and Malawi. And so we need the capital resource to be able to do that. And so for that, we need to fundraise. And just navigating the fundraise expectations. Every entrepreneur wants to retain the best shares at the cap table and all that navigating. And really, it just really boils down to, do you have what it takes to build a valuable business? And does it provide value not only to your customers, but to yourself, to your investors and everyone else? And so just really having to learn that, and that challenge of being in that space is perhaps one of my biggest challenges, which I have learned and continuing to learn to navigate. And yeah, those would typically be the highlight of the big challenges I suppose I have faced.
Yeah, and you're in the middle of closing what we call a Series A round. So it's like your next round of investment with potential new investors, and working on closing $10 million, which is extraordinary. And tell me, I mean, maybe connected to fundraising, maybe not connected to fundraising, but if you could go back in time and say, I wish I had known this earlier, or I wish I had known.
Right.
What do you, now knowing where you're at right now, what do you wish you'd known earlier? What would have been helpful to have had insider insights into previously?
And so I just also then just really narrow it down on the fundraise itself. And I know we always have we have our strategic sessions quarterly, monthly in the town halls as well with you, and just taking in all that learning. And I think sometimes what we take for granted with those sessions is, all right, we're going to have a session with Sarah, and then let's pack away. It's back to what we do every day. But I will not take away the value of having mentors and really taking the time to learn through every single detail of what they are sharing, or what you need to learn from all of that, right? And to be able to quickly apply that into your business, and to be able to make, or rather to get the outcomes that you expect. And what I'm trying to say with this is, going into fundraising our Series A at this point, and looking to build a valuable business, valuable company. One of the things that you always iterated to us is just being very intentional and knowing your numbers, and being very intentional and as much as possible, generating as much revenue and being focused on that. Having pivoted to being a digital platform, we lost out an opportunity. While we were focused on getting our customers digitally, we've lost an opportunity of digitizing a lot of customers that could have become potential clients. And by now, we would have talked about a bigger customer base, and really just looking at a bigger and valuable company, which perhaps would have been able to fundraise better and how we wanted to. I remember we were looking at fundraising about $25 million. And I think the real truth always comes down to, are you really worth $25 million, or what are you really fundraising? And so knowing what we needed to do now, which is basically build a very valuable company, being focused on generating as much revenues as we could, being focused on growing the business, staying true to the purpose, staying away from all the shiny things that come with navigating a business. And we're going to look like Google. Let's make sure that the offices are the poshest of places, and we're going to do this. But I think what I'm basically trying to say is just really staying true in the really early stages, which is basically your Series A and pre-seed, and being focused on just generating as much revenue as you can, being intentional about knowing what your numbers look like, being very clear on what valuations would look like, and what sort of metrics were you trying to apply to your business to be able to apply in your fundraise. And so, I think those are some of the things that I feel we should have been, or I should have been focused on growing the business. And while we've done our best doing what we can now, those are some of the things we know, and we can see where the gaps are, and looking to make sure that we actually catch up on them and just be very intentional about being focused on the vision.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I think every entrepreneur, Evelyn, always thinks they're like the exception to the rule. It's like, I'm the one that's going to break the system. I'm the one that's going to make something happen that, no one else has ever done before. I'm going to get the valuation that's like crazy high in the sky. And the crazy thing is that everyone always thinks like that, and everyone always thinks they know best, right? Until they realize they don't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's so fascinating hearing you say that, because what you're basically saying is, I wish I'd learned faster. I wish I'd taken what I was hearing and applied it and did it.
Yeah.
I wish, and so often entrepreneurs have to learn the hard way, even when someone's trying to tell you this is the path, this is what you've got to do, this is how you've got to do it. Sometimes, just the fact that we're entrepreneurial we think we know best. And we think, we know better than anyone else who might tell us anything. And that's true for myself included. It's so common amongst entrepreneurs, but I love that piece of advice. It's like, listen to your mentors, people who've been there, and, obviously be careful about who your mentors are, right? But if people have been there and done it, and they have experience that probably cost them a lot to get that piece of information, or to get that knowledge, or to get that experience, listen to them, listen and apply, and do, because you're entirely right. It is about, how can I get farther ahead faster? It's like, how can I accelerate my journey? Because if I can accelerate my journey, I get to a different ending point, or I get to a different place when I'm going to raise my next round of money, and that creates different valuations. So I love that. I think that's really interesting to hear you say. And I still need to hear that piece of advice myself. It's like, listen and apply and do. And get mentors around yourself, and get people who've been there and done it, to walk alongside you, and help you.
And it's just interesting how, as you've heard it before, you sort of ignore that piece of advice, and it comes, you find it as you go in your journey, and you realize, wait a minute, it was late before me 10 months ago. I should have executed a little bit better. And so
I know it's the most frustrating thing as an investor, that's for sure. Well, not as an investor, just as a mentor. It's anytime anyone is being coached, it's the most frustrating thing. And you know the answers, but you have to wait for your mentee to discover that maybe you are right.
And so immediately, as you can filter out all the noise, all the unnecessary, and just really stay focused to what you were doing in the beginning or needed to have done, is just really the best thing that, or rather piece of advice I'll probably give at this point in time.
Yeah, I love it. Staying focused, staying true to your mission, listening to the advice, getting the fundamentals done, which is acquiring customers, driving your revenue, and hopefully creating the, staying true to the impact and the purpose that of the vision of what you've got, of what you're trying to build, and not getting derailed by shiny and new. I like that a lot. It's very easy for entrepreneurs to get distracted by shiny and new.
Exactly. And just get caught up in all the nuts and bolts. So just
stay
away.
Exactly. Keeping the main thing. Yep. 100%. I love it. Evelyn, we could talk, I'm sure, all day long. But is there one thought that you would like to leave us with? We've had so many great thoughts from you, loads of quotable quotes and brilliant nuggets from here. But if there's one thought you'd like to leave us with, what would it be?
I think it would just really just staying true to your mission. And I think because I've really found myself having a lot of introspection about it the past few months. And in my journey, I realized that the more I stay to the course of what we wanted to do, what we are trying to do, we achieve the best results because we know how to do it, right? And so staying truly focused to what that journey is, what you really want to do, and anything else that comes on the side is the extra noise that can be done with the extra time. And so that's pretty much how I think I have found myself navigating into this year, and just really being very intentional about that. And so I'll basically be one of like that last minute thing I pretty much want to leave every entrepreneur with. So there's always going to be that extra shiny thing, that extra thing that you can do, especially thinking about all these multiple revenue streams that entrepreneurs like to make sure is running or they are doing, right, as a business. And so just really being true to what you're doing, staying intentional about it. And and I think that would be like the one thing I want to leave everyone with.
Focused. I love it. That's brilliant advice. Evelyn, if people want to be in touch with you or follow you, where can they find you online? Okay,
so to find me online, you can get me on LinkedIn and Facebook, which is and Twitter, which is Evelyn Chilomo Kaingu. And you can reach me there any day, anytime. I try as much as possible to be responsive when I can. And you can also just latch onto our website, which is basically www.lupiya.com, and you can get a lot of detail into what we do. So we're expanding Tanzania and Malawi, so you can find us so you can find us there as well, other than Zambia. And if you're anywhere in the world and looking to make placements and invest into agri SMEs and individuals, you can come onto our peer-to-peer investment platform and support women, support entrepreneurs, and that's the best way you can find us. And happy to connect when you can.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's been so great to spend time with you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us and to share your story. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.